And we're back live for episode
Look at that.
204 of Trek
Yeah.
Live. How you doing this morning, Dan, with your fancy new background?
Doing great. I'm excited, over the moon to be back live. I think Trek Live is not complete without a live audience interacting with us, helping us steer the conversation. So I'm excited.
Me too. We've been technically back a little bit for the last couple of months. We've done a couple of pre-recorded episodes, just kind of keep the conversation going and to touch on some things. But we were really eager to hopefully get life at a more stable point. Mostly speaking for you, you've had a lot as like I said, your background shows. You've
Yeah.
moved, you're in a different place. You have a new member of your family, obviously, as we've touched on.
Yes.
So we needed some time to completely get back on our feet to try to get back to the more routine live stream kind of format, and this is our first attempt to try to get back at that. I didn't advertise this too much because I wasn't sure. I'm producing, which I haven't done in some time. Dan's in a new location, obviously, so this is kind of a test balloon. Hopefully
Yes.
it works. Hopefully there's no major technical glitches. But so far so good. We have Rob in the room saying hello.
Hey, Rob.
Asking you how you're doing and your little one and your lovely wife.
They're doing great. Little Squish is she's it's been good. It's been tough, but it's been good as well. Both ends of the spectrum, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
When you bring a little one into this world.
Mm-hmm.
The missus is doing good. She has officially completed her first season of Star Trek. She watched Strange New Worlds with me, so I'm sure there's going to be some discussion about that maybe in a further episode. But yeah, doing good.
That's very exciting. I have a friend who also completed the first season of Star Trek by watching Strange New Worlds as well. So I think we both kind of use that show as let's see if it see if it works on somebody who's uninitiated. And
yeah,
it's been an interesting experience. Speaking for myself, so yeah, that's exciting. This week we are going to be just kind of touching on my rewatch, which I just finished this weekend. It's been a 2-year ordeal. I started in May of 2020. It's kind of nebulous, though. I actually like Twitter Rewatch 3.0. My current logo, that persona on my Twitter profile has been active for long before then. I had started a rewatch. I want to say back in late 2019. It was slow going. Life kind of prevented it from ever getting into a real rhythm for a variety of reasons. And then the pandemic hit, and I needed escapism, and I kind of restarted it, and it never really let up from there. It took 2 years to do it, which is longer than previous attempts have. But I'm kind of grateful for that because it now that it's over, it feels like the stuff that I started with was a long time ago, and I'm like ready to go again, which is not usually.
Me too.
When I finish, I need like a long break, and I don't feel like I need one at all right now. So that's one different little nugget for this rewatch specifically because of the longer period of time. Kind of like you. I mean, yours took longer than mine for sure. You took a much slower, more deliberate pace, which is good. I mean, it worked. It worked for you, and it did. I mean, now I'm jealous of your when you hit certain shows on your next go round. You're really talking like years since the last time you've seen some of these episodes, and that's kind of an ideal situation. I long for being able to like pop on an episode and not totally remember what I'm getting into, which unfortunately for me never really happens. So.
Yeah, that's my goal, to keep it fresh. That's why the rewatch takes so long. It's to keep the episodes fresh, as possible.
Yeah, and I'm glad that I did that. I think the other component to I was talking about this with some friends last night on online on Twitter and such, but I think having, unlike some of those previous rewatches like 1.0, 2.0, kind of on Twitter. Those finished with more finite like it's done. And when it ended, I was like at the end of Star Trek for all intents and purposes. There was no more, and having it like right now, it kind of worked out perfectly with the timing where I finished when Strange New Worlds ended, and there's like a month now at least where there's nothing, so it kind of is somewhat finite, and it's a nice cushy spot to stop. But having all this new content that I'm loving a lot has me energized, and um, it doesn't feel like a completed product when I'm finished, which is kind of nice. Yeah. So we're just going to touch on a few things. I have our producing side of things situated so that I can pop up a spreadsheet that I use. I'm not going to get too fancy and crazy with it. I have all kinds of data on there, most of which is available on Twitter. In the show notes below, I included the link to the thread on Twitter where I kind of dumped all my stuff. I have like a big spreadsheet that I use to basically create like a grade point average for each individual season, or I just put like a number associated with a letter grade for each episode, and kind of tally that up. That's on one screenshot, and then I have episode rankings for each individual series as well on that thread. So that's all available online. That I would encourage everybody to take a look at if you're curious about that kind of thing from an individual person. But I'm going to try to show a little bit of it on here to kind of aid some of the conversation as we get going. But I'm going to kind of let Dan take some of this with like I'm curious. Like I don't want to talk the whole time. If you have any questions about that kind of like I did for you, I kind of debriefed you at the end of yours. I asked you some stuff. So I'm eager to hear what you're curious about. Anybody in the chat that's watching, I know Rob's in there. I'm happy to field anything that you might have in mind.
And if you're listening to this on the podcast feed, I highly recommend, like Bill said, going to his Twitter, and you can download some of the screen grabs and stuff from his Excel kind of spreadsheet, because the amount of data it's such a great and wonderful thing to have when you're listening to this, because you can see, like Bill said, a bunch of I have the GPA up of like the big board of all the GPAs of each season breakdown. But I'm curious, Bill, of your top 10, and I guess this is maybe a bigger, broader question, but with GPAs, that's how you grade the episodes, correct? So
Right.
Does your top 10 episodes differ from your GPAs that you give them to favorites?
No, I kind of, they kind of go hand in hand the way that I kind of let the data drive me. So the way I do this, I guess maybe I should start here. The episode grades and the rankings is all done like one episode at a time. I watch the episode, I try to give it all of my attention for those 45 minutes or however long, and at the end I decide on a grade, I put it in the sheet, and then I slot each individual episode as I go in the rank. So if I give the Galileo 7 a B, I'm going to go to my ranks where all the episodes I've watched to that point sit. I look for the other Bs, and I put the Galileo 7 where it kind of makes sense. I kind of start at the bottom of the Bs and go, is this one better than this one, this one, this one, this one, until I find the answer, and that's where it slots. So I try, this is where, there's a marginal difference for sure, what we've touched on a lot with like best and favorite perspectives. There is, I think, if you put a phaser in my head and ask me with those two different kinds of questions, I might come up with some different answers, but I honestly couldn't really differentiate using this. Like, I try to be as kind of down the middle as I can,
Yeah.
But I'm also not, this is not scientific. I mean, this is gonna, one of the things I do is when I do another rewatch, I kind of delete.
It looks very scientific.
It does look very scientific.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. That means that's a compliment. But I try not to overthink it. This is not like a hard and fast, I can't sit here and go into like great detail with, like a very collegiate professor kind of attitude about, well, yesterday's Enterprise is clearly better than a mock time because of X, Y, and Z. It's a total gut reaction, and when you get to like the real little nitty gritty differences between like number 5 and number 8, it's really by again by my gut and by a hair kind of things. And when I go to another rewatch, what I tend to do is I try to close the book on what I did before, and let my gut reaction on that time drive it. And inevitably there are differences. So Rob asked the question: are any massive changes or surprises with this compared to other rewatches? And yeah, there always are, because I try not to reference too heavily stuff I've done before. I've done this full ranking before, I think on my first rewatch on Twitter that I did, and I'm sure it's vastly different. There are episodes that I gave, a C before that I might have given a B this time, and kind of vice versa. Um, so yeah, like where like my top 10 is pretty. To answer your question, I guess, yeah, I guess they're the same, right?
The same.
Like you were asking, would my top 10?
Oh, right. Yeah.
Like episodes, for example, be. Correct me if I'm wrong. Ask your question again, if you don't mind, just
Okay.
to make sure I'm understanding.
So I'm just looking at a few of the graphics stuff on your Twitter. It seems like, and there's other rewatchers out there and other people in
Sure.
the podcast game that have their rankings, whether it be their favorites or whether it be like desert island picks, like which would you take to a desert island, right? Similar to mine, but for me, it's more of, and I know you have such a movie background as well. I think being a critic and being able to critique these episodes and seasons the way you are with the letter grade, I feel like there's a difference between best and favorite.
Yeah.
And to me, this looks like best. Like this
Probably.
GPA style model is based off of like
Best objective.
best
Yeah,
quality, like that. Like
yeah, that's.
I don't know. My question is,
Mm-hmm.
is there a difference between? Is there like some favorite kind of pushed into that, or is it just more just really trying to be objective as possible and give it a fair grade?
I guess
Or is it a mix of both?
It's a mix of both, but I guess the real answer would be that it's more aiming at the more objective best in my view. And if I had to take the desert island approach, the way like Jim Morehouse over at Trek Ranks always kind of describes his version of this when he ranks the series, he's kind of looking at it like, if I could only watch one for the rest of my life, which one would I want to watch over and over and over again? So rewatchability and episodes that are extraordinarily heavy and depressing, or have a sort of negative tone to them, might get pushed down the list sometimes for him. I don't want to speak too much for him, but that's my understanding at least. And so if I'm taking that sort of approach, if I know I'm only going to be able to take 20 episodes with me for the rest of my life, I'm probably going to go to that group at the very top, but I might pick and choose from that group. There might be some bouncing around if I'm really looking for true favorites that I'm going to get to keep forever or have to watch on a go. But that also kind of changes by the day. It kind of shifts with my mood. Sometimes it's kind of more aimed at a certain series than another on a given day. If I'm more kind of in the mood for old school, the original stuff, I might lean more towards the original and the Next Generation. And sometimes I get into these kicks where I'm really full-throatedly obsessed with Discovery and Strange New Worlds and Picard and Lower Decks, and I'm more looking for that stuff. So it's you're right. I mean, if you're looking at it for like, what is this list? Is it his best or is it his favorites? It's probably easier to say like, this is my guess at what's the best in my view.
Okay. But still, it's there is some, I don't know. opinion in
Yeah,
there.
absolutely. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Definitely. It's a hybrid. It's definitely a hybrid. Yeah.
So I'm looking at the shows broken down by the seasons, and then I got the seasons on the side as well. But just this is just something that I noticed, and maybe you can talk about not episodes specifically, but just runs of episodes where you think they're really good. Because if I'm looking at the Next Generation, right, from season 3 to even 6, it's very consistent. It's right around that 3 range, right? And so even with Deep Space Nine, right, we get this um, in season 4 to season 6. They're kind of right around 3 again. And then same with Voyager. We get season 5 and season 6. Really consistent. I guess, no, sorry. Season 4 and season 5. Really consistent with each other. Is that, and it's hard to kind of point to the new stuff because, we're only 4 or 5 episodes or seasons into some of these shows. Is there runs that you've noticed on this rewatch that you've kind of pointed to as more consistent sides of things, or have you just kind of always known that in the middle batch of most of these shows, they're pretty firing on all cylinders? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I guess my next question is, let's see, how has ranking the newer stuff uh, kind of compared to some of these, like the Berman era stuff that you've ranked before? Some of these are new to all of us, and how does is it challenging with the recency bias? But also, I guess it's challenging on both sides. It's challenging trying to look at some of these older episodes with fresh eyes and not just fall into what you've done before. But also, I feel like, at least for me, rewatching these episodes, it's hard for me to give a fair grade because with recency bias, I feel like I just love every episode that comes out. I love, the most recent Strange New Worlds episode, which I guess, spoiler alert, you gave a 4.0. It's do you
Mhm.
try to I don't know. I guess, how do you give a fair grade to such a recent episode?
Yeah, Rob, I appreciate that. I guess my last answer is lost to ether. Only you heard that. It was
Mm.
the audio when I switched channels.
It was a great answer.
Well, thanks. But I should be back now. So,
Cool.
yeah, the new stuff is definitely a challenge, and to be honest, that's what I enjoyed the most this time around because there's so much of it, and because that's where the real challenge kind of lies in my
Yeah.
book. Because a lot of that stuff is more new, and in some cases, it's not even just the recency stuff. Like it hasn't set into the
So it was 11 seasons, right?
something like that. 11, 12.
The
It's kind of hard to count.
the new
Depending on how you
stuff.
count the short tracks and
Oh, true.
Prodigy and like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's it can be hard to. There was a real challenge when I would go to rank the episodes, trying to rank something from Picard season 2 alongside like in the same stack of episodes as episodes in the Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, the original series that I've seen so many times, and I feel pretty comfortable with putting them in their spots. Is definitely was the most difficult part of the ranking process, at least. Combating that recency, I think the big challenge with that is to try to when I watch these new episodes, the first time I watch them, I try not to think about, and I think that's why sometimes I get like hit with this wave of just like, oh, I loved it in the initial aftermath, and sometimes I come out loving it and feeling really positive about it. Like if I come on to talk to you the night after we watch it, just kind of off air, I'm like all positive, and then when I rewatch it down the road, I might end up with a C plus or a C. That's definitely happened over the years. That first watch when it's brand new, I try not to think about it too much. Like, where's this going to slot in my ranks? I just kind of let it wash over me, and I watch it kind of just emotionally, and I don't. But that's not to say that every time there's an episode that I kind of end up giving a C or a C plus to. I loved it on the initial go round. There are certainly episodes of these shows that I watch. I sit there and I watch, and I go, well, that's more like a C, and it's probably going to fit towards the middle of the pack or towards the bottom third of the ranks, like on that initial watch while I'm sitting there. Like there are times that happens, but no two experiences are the same. Sometimes it takes a couple of those, go rounds with these episodes to really let it settle into where I kind of view it in the grand scheme of things. And it's definitely easier. One of the things that struck me doing this is seasons like the first 2 of Discovery, for example, have been around for quite a few years now. They're 4 or 5 years old, and I've seen those episodes a lot over the years.
Yeah.
So they kind of, an episode like Lethe or Context is for Kings feels more like the Voyager stuff and the Enterprise stuff and the Deep Space Nine stuff.
Solidified in its position.
Yeah, because I've seen it many times, and it's lived in my head alongside these other episodes for years, not weeks or months anymore. So that time frame does definitely give a lot of that. So the real difference to me is like the real new stuff: Strange New World season 1, Picard season 2, Discovery season 4. That's where it really got tough for me, and that's where there's probably going to be potential for a lot of change on rewatch 4.0, 5.0. Those you could see some pretty wide shifts. Where some of those sit.
Okay, I really do like the system of the GPA because it's I think it's easy to cite it's easy to give. It's not easy, but it's easier to give a great episode of 4.0 because there's a bunch of 4.0s, I think, in Star Trek. Yeah. There's a lot of great episodes in Star Trek, but talk a little bit about your top 100. I know you did a little bit of a mini rewatch with kind of, I don't know, I don't want to call it checking your work, but experiencing, the top echelon of your rankings. Because I know it's really fun to do all this, statistical analysis and nerd out on all these things. I really love it. But I think it's also great to see if the proof is in the pudding, if these episodes definitely hold up, together. And I know that's been a challenge for both of us, where it's hard for us to bounce around to different shows and different time frames and the Berman era stuff, and then bounce back to maybe a Picard episode. It's just but talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's definitely the case. I did when I kind of had a week where I really felt like watching Star Trek weekend. I guess last weekend I didn't really have anything to watch on the rewatch. I was in kind of a pause mode, waiting to be able to do Strange New Worlds in a quicker run, and I felt like watching a mix of stuff. So I started with like my 100 and worked my way back. I didn't get too far. I got into the over the course of like 4 or 5 days. I got like 20 episodes into it, so they did roll off. I did watch a lot of Star Trek. A lot of it, I wasn't like sitting and giving it necessarily all of my attention. Some of it was kind of just playing in the background while I was doing other things. But that was a good experience. Like as you kind of just alluded to, I have a hard time kind of randomly picking episodes and just bouncing around the timeline. A lot of people are really good at that. They can just bounce and pick what they feel like watching. My brain works in a way where I think I've conditioned myself to like watch Star Trek in the form of a rewatch and watch it as a whole and go in the order. And so this was a cool kind of forced way to bounce from Deep Space Nine to Picard to Next Gen to the original, and I got a taste of everything. And I think the reason that they were rolling so easily and in like 4 or 5 days I watched like 22, 23 episodes was I was watching the episodes that I really love. And that helped a lot. I definitely felt the difference that I wasn't kind of just force feeding myself the episodes in the order that they were produced or that they aired, and powering through Sub Rosa or Spirit Folk or The Fight or Like He Who's Without Sin, like episodes that I know I'm not huge on and are really towards the bottom of my list. I'm not dealing with them. I'm just watching the stuff that is like really at the peak. So that was a really nice change of pace. It kind of validated some of those choices to have that high. A lot of them are pretty. I always kind of get self-conscious with these kinds of lists because sometimes I feel like they're chalk and really, really down the middle, and they're just the classics that everybody that wind up on like best of lists and have been kind of cited over the years. And I get self-conscious about, are they really my real favorites, or am I just kind of letting groupthink drive my own thinking? And when I did that, I really did feel like, no, these are my favorites. Like these are easy to watch. I get wrapped up in them even if I'm not giving them all of my attention. I like stop for a second and look at the TV, and I'm drawn into it right away, and kind of zoned in for the next 25 minutes. It did kind of validate. I wasn't doing it from the perspective of like sitting back with my arms folded, like, okay, let's make sure that Iborg is better than Necessary Evil, and that Reunion is better than New Eden. Like I wasn't looking that closely at it and trying to be that scientific with one episode at a time. Kind of, is it better than? I was just kind of letting the broad stroke of, are these episodes belonging in this company, and I felt like they were for me. You're going to see me fix something on live YouTube here. I see a little screw up. Necessary Evil is a Deep Space Nine episode and needs to be read, not blue.
Oh, whoops.
Whoops indeed.
Let's talk about some of the bottom of the barrel episodes.
Sure.
I'm trying to find any Fs, and I know looks like there's a Voyager one, Voyager episodes.
So I have. It looks like.
So, I don't know. It looks like a lot of these lower tier episodes, I guess, which it's kind of falls into the point we made earlier in the show, but it either falls, I think, the early seasons, like season 1 or season 2, or it's kind of on the back end of things in some cases.
So they kind of bounce around. Some of that, yeah. There's like season 3. There's a couple from season 3 at TOS. There's a couple in there's
season 4 of Enterprise.
Season 4 of Enterprise. There's one of them in there. There's one of each in season 1 and season 7 of TNG. So you're right. There's a lot of like beginning and end kind of stuff. But I just counted. There's 15 of them in the 800.
Okay.
32 that are on the full ranks.
Yeah.
And I kind of have them highlighted on the YouTube, I think. So it's I have Spock's brain. These are the voyages. This is working downward. So the best of the F's is Spock's brain.
Yeah.
These are the voyages. The fight from
Yeah.
Voyager. Let he who was without sin. Threshold. Extinction from Enterprise. The Muse. Spirit Folk. Fascination. Precious Cargo. The Trouble with Edward, which is the newest member of that prestigious club. The Short Track.
Okay.
The Sub Rosa, Prophet and Lace, and the Children Shall Lead, and Code of Honor. So got a little bit of everything in there. Nothing from the new shows, other than the short tracks, has been.
That's good.
And I think that's to me. I kind of think of that. I think the way I kind of. I just posted last night my sort of like key for the letter grade. Like, what does each letter grade kind of mean? And like an A is a classic, true personal favorite. A B is like good, solid, well executed Star Trek. A C is perfectly fine, watchable,
middle of the road.
Yeah. A D would be a overall weak, but maybe has some positive, favorable qualities. Like there might be something in it, whether it's a production element or a character beat or a piece. There's something in there. There's a kernel of something.
Never gonna write anything off.
Right, but the F is like
unless it gets an F. Yeah.
Right, there's the 15 of them, I would say there's like I would really struggle to find like a really positive element in these 15 episodes for me, and I think because the new stuff is just is so well produced and the production value is so impressive, and because a lot of the serialization is kind of continuing an extended story in a lot of these shows, it's hard for something to like dip that down. And be that's like always the give and take with the episodic approach that we all I think really like and really just kind of felt in love with Strange New Worlds is because of that format. You can have a real miss. You can tell a single story that just doesn't click, or it is a swing and miss. And the newer shows that have the more serialized approach, I think, kind of might protect against getting that low, but it also can protect against getting that high. If you're
that's what I was just going to ask. Is that going to pull back to less classics?
I think it can. I think it definitely. I think some of the episodes that have gotten the highest on my list, when I think of episodes of Discovery that are really high on my top 100, things like New Eden, things like Lethe and Context is for Kings. These are more kind of episodic episodes. These are episodes that stand on their own really well, and are kind of easily consumed as individual bites. And that I don't think is necessarily an accident. I think that helps in some ways. Just let. I think for me, the way that I consume this stuff, like the way to get to the top of that list is really going to be driven by how well does the episode kind of. I feel bad saying this because
stand on its own.
Stand on its own, yeah. Like it's not a punishment to be serialized by any means. There's a lot of Discovery towards the top of that list. There's quite a bit of it in that top 200, for example. But I think when the top of the list is Balance of Terror and Doomsday Machine and Amok Time and Best of Both Worlds and Moonlight, episodes that really do work well in an hour in a bite, that I'm kind of looking for other things that feel like that to get that high on the list.
That's why I love because it's almost like you have to look at the season in a whole. That's why I love the season breakdowns.
Yeah.
Because for a while it was almost like, okay, Star Trek is transitioning to. Are we going to have to transition to just ranking the season because it's so hard to. But I totally agree. Like looking at the GPAs for each season, they are very consistent. But it's also like, okay, I mean, there's obviously some 4.0s here in Discovery, but it's again, like you said, they stand on their own very well. And so, is that going to be the mark of New Trek, where they're going to have to stand on their own, but also, I guess, push back? Strange New Worlds is giving us that just really episodic type of feeling that we have missed out. But the difference between those two shows is it's not going to have the serialization as much. I mean, Strange New Worlds does, and not to go off at a tangent on Strange New Worlds, it does have,
it actually does.
You know, that which I think is such a mark of some of these, you know, Berman era shows. Is it does have also, you know, the episodic feel, obviously, but it does have elements of you know, her you know, trying to figure out what she wants to do, and
Pike's whole thing.
Some of these, Pike's whole thing. That's
They all do. I mean, that's a whole different conversation that I'm sure we should have with Strange New Worlds and like the structural approach to
is it really a true episodic?
Or and is it? To me, it's more. To me, like everybody kind of cites it as a. I don't want to get into this too much, but like today it should be another conversation.
Yeah.
For me, like it's closer to Deep Space Nine than the original series and TNG. Like Deep Space Nine, the way that it had Deep Space Nine has like little stretches of 2, 3, 4, 6 parters at the beginning of season 6, but they're individual stories for the vast majority that have this through line with characters. The character experiences are serialized, and they don't forget things that happened, and things pay off when there are big moments. And to me, that's kind of what Strange New Worlds is. It's not like a true anthology the way that TOS is kind of structured to be, where it's truly like the episode is over and we don't reference it again. But that's definitely another talk for another day.
Yes, big time.
Yeah, but one of the things that kind of surprises me when I do this is definitely the sort of the closeness of the GPAs for the seasons. Like if you do look at the ranking of the seasons with each GPA next to each individual season, like from 3.12, 312 to the bottom TAS at 225 is definitely like the outlier way down. I think like noticeably down. But like the full seasons, it's kind of, there's not much of a. I guess how do I say this? Like if you use like a line chart, it would be a pretty gradual climb or fall if you went from best to worst or worst to best. It's not like a jagged edge.
No, it's
a pretty.
How do you say it? It's consistent.
Yeah.
Like it's
consistent,
yeah. Because I mean and that's the beauty of using a numerical type of ranking system, is you can definitely see that numerically, because you're right. Even, you know, cited as some of the worst seasons, like you said, in, I guess, your opinion, the original or the animated series, it's still, you know, close to, I don't know, I would say, this might start something, but like Next Generation season 1, it's still fairly close to that season. So I just really find that fascinating to see.
I got into a conversation on Twitter earlier this weekend where I kind of the animated series is not part of my episode rankings. I wasn't able to. I just couldn't figure out a way to do that. So I kind of, in a side conversation on Twitter, I admitted to like kind of grading the animated episodes on a curve. Like they're definitely the outlier of this. I just couldn't. They're there. I graded them. I watched them. They're part of the rewatch. But if you go to the full ranking, you're not going to find any TAS, because I honestly don't know. Like my real gut answer is that they're the bottom 22. Like, if I'm being real honest, like that's kind of where they are. So they're kind of graded on like a little bit of a separate entity. They're harder to discount because I think the creative team behind Star Trek these days, and the way that the whole of Trek gets talked about, it's kind of been invited back into the fold a little bit. It feels less ostracized than it did years ago, where I was able to kind of discount it and make it go away and not think about it too much. I feel like it's more a part of the story now, for warts and all. So I feel compelled to like include it, but it's impossible for me to. It's the one thing of this bunch that I feel like I can't logically look at on the same plane as Lower Decks or Prodigy, even other animated shows.
Yeah.
Let alone Next Generation or Strange New Worlds, or even the original series, which is it's kind of direct spun from source material.
That's fine. We could still look at season. We could still look at season 3 of TOS or season 1 of Deep Space Nine. Like they're all still within really close to each other, and people cite Deep Space Nine as their favorite Star Trek show ever. Like it's still. I love to see the consistency, and I love to see if we want to start some stuff, we can, look at okay, who if some of these shows are the greatest of all time. Discovery still has a better GPA than some of the early seasons of Deep Space Nine, so I just love that.
That's
see the numerical values.
Right now, Discovery, I wouldn't say like this is where it gets to like. I actually, if you notice, you're seeing something on the screen now that I cut off, I cropped from what I put on Twitter, which is at the very far right at the top. You can see like the actual series averages.
Okay.
On the YouTube feed, you're not seeing it on Twitter. And right now, Discovery is the highest rated show by a hair. It's 2.86 as an average for the series, and that kind of opens up. And I like my gut. I love
But that is that your favorite?
No, it's not. Like
okay.
But you know me, and how often have I Snapchatted you or tweeted or said something to you that is some spin on I effing love Star Trek Discovery. Like I say that a lot.
Yeah.
I really, really do, and it is my kind of comfort show at this point for me. But if I'm being no, it's not my favorite of the 12 shows on that list. It's not.
It's also incomplete.
It's incomplete, which is the other thing.
We don't know how far we're gonna go. Are we gonna go 5 seasons, or are we gonna go 7, like a traditional show, which will change?
It will change, right? But it could go up. I mean, the
sure, yeah, it could be more consistent. Yeah,
like we were just talking about with the serialized and episodes not. The reason that it's that high is that it doesn't have Fs and it doesn't have very many Ds. If you look at like Discovery on my thing, there's a lot of C's and C pluses, but it doesn't have. There's not a Sub Rosa and a Code of Honor or
there's a few Ds.
There's some Ds. There's a couple of them, but
there's no Fs.
There's no zeros that are really dragging that number down. And that's, I think, because of the format of the show and because of there's 15 or 14 or 13 or 10 episodes of a season and not 26. So some of these newer shows have somewhat of a statistical advantage in terms of that. Like they're not Strange New Worlds, as amazing as it is. If Enterprise or Voyager had to ask of put 10 episodes together, not 26, that are going to drive you into the ground over the course of a year as a writing group, as a writer's room and a staff. You hear people talk about working on those shows, and the consistent story is by the end of the season they just felt completely ground down into a pulp. Like they were just beaten down by having to generate 26 of these every year, and the inevitability is that some of them will be stinkers, some of them won't work as well as others. When Strange New Worlds can do 10, that those other shows, those other staffs would have killed for that opportunity. They would have been able to whittle down their best ideas and gone with the 10 episodes that they really felt great about, the best ideas.
Have gone longer. We would have 12 episodes or 12 seasons of Deep Space Nine if it were that case.
Yeah. It's just a very different thing, and it does give, I think, some of these newer shows a little bit of a statistical advantage as a series because of the lack of misses, at least the way that I'm consuming them and the way that I view them. Like in Strange New Worlds, I guarantee you, it's gonna be when it's over. Strange New Worlds, if it has any kind of consistency with the way season 1 just went, it's gonna be the highest rated show. I think. I mean, I'm sure in terms of this format, I'm not guaranteeing I'm gonna come away saying it's my favorite. Shows, because I just think they're apples and oranges in terms of the length and how many episodes there are, and I don't think they're playing on the same playing field for that discussion. But that's the numbers say Discovery is my favorite, I guess, because of, like I said, the lack of
GPA that you get. Yeah, but then it's hard to grade because, like you said, the way the structure of the show, it with the serialization, it just keeps it more consistent, which is always going to be tough to put these newer shows against kind of the Permanent stuff because
they're just different.
Don't have as serialized elements. They do have. I'm not saying there's plenty of serialization in Permanent stuff, but yeah. I guess I'm not sure how long we're going, but what's next? What's next for the rewatch? Are we doing another one of these? What's the plan?
There's definitely going to be another one. I'm eager to get into 4.0 sooner rather than later. The big question is always like, what do I do? I try to do something new with each one. Whether it's I try to make each one a little different than the last.
Yeah.
And I haven't cracked that code yet. I don't know. I could easily kind of sleepwalk it and just do it again and take kind of the same approach and try to basically wipe this board and do it over again. And the idea there is this is kind of locked in as the 2020 to 2022, where I was when I was 33 to 35. This is how I felt about these episodes, and if I do it again, that's how I felt about them those years. And I could do that, and I'm sure I certainly will do that. But I would love to find a way to create a little bit of a different, give it a little bit of a different, unique, aspect.
The interesting thing is with this 48-week run we just went on with new Star Trek is you're probably gonna have possibly more
for sure
Star Trek to rank for the first time, just because the state of Star Trek on TV right now is we're going to be adding more episodes to rank. So
that's the one definite guarantee is by the time I get to the end of Rewatch 4.0, there's an entire, another 50, 60 episodes could be on the board, 70 episodes, 80 episodes on the board that aren't on this at all. Like who knows? If I take the same kind of timeline and it's a 2.5 year kind of run, there could be new shows, new series in 2024 or 2025.
That's crazy.
That by definition, I mean, it will be different, and it'll take on a sort of new form. But there's all kinds of ways to do it. I've already kind of I've been asked on Twitter, like, are you going to change up the order? Like, there are all kinds of ways. Like, our friend Thad is watching the episodes alphabetically. That's one way to do it.
That's so cool. That's so cool.
Alex Perry is watching episodes in kind of a similar order to me, but he did Enterprise first, which I used to do. 4 seasons of Enterprise. He watched 2 seasons of Discovery and then TOS, and then just figuring Discovery 3, 4, and beyond at the very end, because it's like true timeline. That's one way to do it for sure.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of ways to tackle this. The way you did it is a perfectly valid, to kind of watch the shows not necessarily and just commit to it, and then go to the next show that you're kind of feeling. I'm really set in my ways from doing this over the years that I probably will not tinker with the format too much in terms of the order of things. What I usually look for is a more, whether it's like, which I'm kind of like, in the past I've polled the Twitter community on episodes that have gone. I'm kind of doing that independently of the rewatch now. I'm going to continue to do that. That's the other thing. The mission of that, if you follow me on Twitter and you're noticing I'm putting up these polls for, how do you grade episode X, is I want to be able to put that board that I just had up on the screen up and have it be like a more consensus view, not my ranks. And that gives me kind of another comparative thing to look at, is how do the episodes rank, and how do the seasons kind of shake out when you poll a community of Star Trek fans, as opposed to it being one dude, me, just independently doing it. I'm doing that now.
Maybe that's what, but maybe you do that in a little bit grander scale. It's like you versus the community or something like that.
Yeah, that kind of thing. And I'm eager to do that and to look for differences. Where am I overrating or underrating something in comparison to the community? I'm looking at things like where if you go to my Twitter profile, you'll see these different charts that I've posted for TOS and the TOS movies. I'm working on TNG season 1 now. I look at the average grade of these episodes. I also look at what I call the passion index, which is the A grade percentage. That's like a kind of another component to look like what episodes generate the most. Which ones have the highest share of A's, and sometimes that stacking is very different than just the generic, like how do they average out. So there's all kinds of ways to like data crunch these things and look at how pools of people view them. So I'm gonna keep doing that. I've incorporated that into the rewatch before.
I've got a idea that's just real time. That maybe I'll edit this question back into where we had like a little bit of dead spot with Bill. I think you should do because we got episodes this year and these past years where there's 2 episodes, I think, right? 2 episodes a week, possibly. I think you should do who won that week, right? Yeah, something like that. But I guess this is the question, really. That was just my idea. Don't take it or leave it if you want. But are those weeks hard to give a fair grade, or do you give some time to those? Give some time, I guess, because don't you watch once Deep Space Nine and Voyager are on at the same time, and Next Generation are on at the same time, and you actually do that's a part of your rewatch where you do bounce between shows, correct?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
How do you is it hard to give those two a fair grade, or you just give some time to those types of episodes when you're making them, or because they're so solidified in your perspective, it's easier to be able to keep those two separate?
I have a pretty easy time, I think, because I've been doing this way for quite a while. That's one thing that's been consistent. Like if you go back to when I first when I first did this in like 2015 on Twitter, I was doing it that way. I was flipping between the shows, and I've kind of done that going back many years now, pre-Twitter. I also experienced a lot of those shows initially with that perspective.
Right.
Like when I remember them kind of being side by side. So they don't. It doesn't present a huge challenge for me, but I love getting to that point for that kind of reason. I like kind of looking at it from the lens of, oh, okay, so Year of Hell Part 1 aired the same week as Sacrifice of Angels from Deep Space Nine. Like, what's the that's 2 classics. Like, who won the week? And then sometimes it's not that fun because it's the fight against, like,
really lopsided.
Like great episode Deep Space Nine. Like that can happen too. It's like clear and obvious question to answer. But I do enjoy that, and I did it again here. And there were a couple of weeks here in 2022 where there were 2 episodes. There's the Picard and Discovery season 4. Picard season 2 and Discovery season 4 overlapped for a few weeks there, and I kept that model. I didn't like jury rig it around to finish season 4 of Picard and then go to season 2 of season 4 of Discovery and then go to season 2 of Picard. Like I watched them as they aired, so that kind of introduces that again, like which one won the week. And I did Twitter polls those weeks of like which of the 2 was better in your opinion. So that could be a thing. Maybe I do that when I hit that point, like kind of look at that more formally as I go. Like these 2 episodes aired the same week, which show won the week. And there's like 7 years of that. With the entirety of Deep Space Nine's run, it pretty much had a partner going alongside of it, whether it was TNG or Voyager. For the whole, that's kind of Deep Space Nine's burden at the time was like it was always kind of playing second fiddle.
Going up against, yeah.
So, there's time to think about this. I'm not looking to jump into this immediately, although last night I was sitting around like late at night and
Friday night,
man, I could watch the Man Trap right now and just go, just start. Like
go for it.
And that's like I said at the beginning, that is not my usual experience with this. Usually in the past when I've ended it, I've wanted to branch off and watch something else or kind of get away from it for a little bit of time, and just knowing that I would come back around and we're talking months, not years, but maybe a couple months. Several months of not doing it. And this time around, for whatever reason, I'm like not into that idea at all. And I think it's because of the longer time, and I think it's because the new stuff has me jazzed. It probably doesn't hurt that we haven't really touched on this, but I am 100% on board. If you look at my overall ranks, I have Equality and Mercy, the Strange New Worlds finale at like 19, 20. Like it is up there, and I feel pretty good about it. Like the recency thing that you were talking about, asking about that's real for me too. And who knows if it'll hang there. But right now, I feel that's the best Star Trek I've seen in 25 years, and I feel confident in that. That's if I go by like if I did an audit, it was
Beloved
like
Enterprise.
look at the I know, and Voyager. It's higher than Scorpion, which is my top Voyager. It's higher than Similitude, which is my top Enterprise. And if I'm looking on the timeline of the episodes that are ahead of it, what's the most recent one? It's In the Pale Moonlight. So I'd be saying it's the best episode of Star Trek is In the Pale Moonlight. And there were some people teasing that and probably saying that too soon on Twitter. People who have the benefit of access to screeners and seeing episodes ahead of time were kind of teasing that and saying stuff like that, which I kind of don't love. I don't like putting that expectation out there and having people go into episodes feeling like
Jim Morales had
looking back,
tweet.
yeah, he did.
Yeah.
And I agree with him on that front. I really do.
Yeah.
But I kind of I watched it and I watched it again and I watched it again and I watched it again over the last few days. I'm like, that tweet was kind of right. Like, in my opinion. And I don't know, that might have helped, like ending on that high a note. I went a lot of years where I would end on Nemesis or These Are the Voyages.
Tough to get back into the rewatch. I wouldn't end like that.
Yeah. It's just a different. That's a whole different ending than ending on such a high
note. Anything else? Any other thing you'd like to highlight? I know we covered a lot here, and if you have any further questions, obviously Bill's Twitter.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a great resource for all this data you can look through and click through, and obviously the Discord server has some great resources as well. So
I would just say that like it really is. It may come across, and there is some truth to like, am I a yes? The answer is yes to the question. Am I a data nerd, like a Star Trek data nerd? Yes, 100%. That is true. But if I really am being honest, like the number one reason for me to do this, to put charts like that out there and to try to rank and to try to figure out GPAs, is as somebody who's grown up with this and has been watching some of these episodes since I was in a walker, and I've lived in my head for such a long time. This is my way of like forcing myself to try to see these things through fresh eyes and to try to give everything a fair shot and not kind of sit on my laurels and think to myself, oh, I felt this way about Hippocratic Oath or name your random episode Phage or whatever when I was 14 or 15, so that's what I'm going to feel about it when I'm 35. Like that, I'm trying to force myself not to do that every single time and every single episode. So it forces me to give every episode a fair shot, try to watch it through fresh eyes, and to try to kind of see the franchise through fresh eyes every time, and to pit things against each other, and not like an adversarial, this is better than that even kind of way, but like how does it all fit, and where are my preferences, and how's my taste kind of moved over the years, and when it's over, I kind of have this finished product of, this is what I did for the last 2 years, and this is how my experience with Star Trek is at that point in my life, as opposed to where maybe it was when I was younger.
And some of these newer stuff, what they're doing in the new stuff is changing. Like how many the view count of Balance of Terror on Paramount Plus probably went up because of the recent episode, and then the Menagerie and all that stuff. It's it's and the Pike stuff and what Discovery is doing too with the Spock character and man, it's even I this is Star Trek 5 might get a little bit rewatched because of what's been going on in Strange New Worlds, and it's just it's even if we keep our same perspective on some of these episodes, the new stuff's gonna change and highlight some of the old stuff. So I'm excited for it.
We've talked about that going back to the beginning of Discovery. I feel like because of the premise of that show and how that show's built, it kind of forces us to re-examine the original series a little bit. If you are open-minded to Discovery and you're not going to push back against it on its merits. And if you're open to it, it can shift your view a little bit of the original series. And to me, that's cool. It's taken a 55-year-old thing that I've loved and watched many, many times, and it makes these old episodes that I know like the back of my hand feel new again, and gives me fresh things to look for and to think about when I'm watching them. And we've talked about that a lot over the years, but that's true now with Strange New Worlds. It's doing that, and even if it doesn't necessarily directly reference back to things, like there's kind of a beautiful cohesion to all this stuff that is kind of accidental in some ways and intentional in others, like the way it harkens back directly and indirectly to old stuff, just by adding to the history of Star Trek. It changes the way other things are perceived and thought of, and that's the best part of having all this new stuff. I think is it not just is it adding to the end of the line and new stuff. It's shaping how we look at some of the old stuff too.
Yeah, I think that about does it for me.
Yeah, I agree. It was really good to be back doing this live, and there was a little tiny technical glitch there. There's one question that I was muted for. Apologize for that, but otherwise I think it went pretty well to be back doing it live, doing it the old-fashioned way. I appreciate Rob hanging with us and fueling our conversation a little bit with some questions and some comments, and looking forward to doing this again. I'm not sure what our schedule is going to be, if we're going to be bi-weekly, weekly, just now that we did this and it was successful, I'll definitely be sure to share on Twitter and on our Discord server, which is a place you should be if you like following us, if you like our show, if you like following us on Twitter. You can DM me on Twitter and ask for an invite to the Discord server for Trek Live. It's a nice little close, not overly huge, intimidating community of Star Trek fans. We're all pretty positive and upbeat about new stuff, and talking about episodes as they come out, and talking about what we're watching, and it's a cool place to get to know people. And we occasionally have casual hangouts and video chats, and it's been a while since we've done that, but hopefully soon we'll get back into that too. In some fashion. But it's a neat place to hang out, and I encourage anybody out there who enjoys what we do to join the club. So DM me on Twitter if you're interested, and we'll get you on board.
Yeah, today was fun. I really liked taking a deep dive into some of all this data, this wonderful data that you have. It's getting my Star Trek Rewatch juices flowing, so I hope to start that in the coming months. And excited for possibly next week or 2 weeks from now for more Star Trek discussion.
Yeah, keep an eye on Twitter. We'll let you know when we're coming back live and what we'll be talking about, just like the old days.
Yep, sounds good.
All right, thanks everybody, and have a good week.
Yep, see you guys next time.